So my name is Gráinne McKeever, and I'm a stand-up comedian. And I get a surprising amount of people that approach me after my shows and ask me if Gráinne McKeever is a stage name. And I always say no, it's not. Mostly because I find people will generally never pick themselves a name that the spell check on their phone insists on interpreting as gonorrhea makeover. You guys seem like a really lovely audience. Can I ask you guys a favor? Will you put up your hands if you've ever heard a rumor that women aren't funny? Okay, everybody, cool, great. So there seems to be a lot of guys out there who are insisting that they have been endowed with some kind of a funny bone that us ladies don't have. Yeah. Some of them might even try to show you. Do not fall for that, okay? But it's not true, it's not true. I know it's not true because I have one too. Yeah, I happen to have a pretty big one, okay? Not by the way that size matters, okay? But mine just happens to be a little bit bigger than average. And so far I've been making pretty good use of it as a stand-up comedian. And you guys might think that being a stand-up comedian is an easy job, but it's actually quite difficult to stand in front of a large group of people like this and tell them all about your thoughts and your insecurities. You know, especially when the only piece of advice that you're ever given to get you through the situation is to imagine the audience naked. And might I say that you guys are looking beautiful right now. And I can see that some of you have pretty big funny bones of your own. But it's not an easy job, you know, with the added pressure of this myth. And genuinely, I'd never heard about this rumour until I began my career as a stand-up comedian. You see, I grew up in quite a matriarchal society. I was raised in a household full of women, I attended all-girls schools, and then I went on to teacher training college where the majority of the students were women. So I knew lots of women, and lots of them were absolutely hilarious. And this rumour just never really raised its ugly head. And when eventually I did hear about the rumour, it didn't faze me, it just surprised me. And what surprised me most was the source of the rumour. Because absolutely nobody in the comedy industry ever mentioned anything like this to me. The absolute opposite. It's actually a really, really welcoming and supportive community, and it's one that I'm really, really proud to be part of. Actually, the majority of the people who brought this rumour to my attention were women. So I'd have a lot of female audience members that would come up to me after shows with words of support and encouragement and concern as to how I must be dealing with the assumption that I, as a woman, wasn't funny. But because I'd never heard about this rumour before and all these women kept telling me, I started to get a tiny bit paranoid that maybe the rumour began with me. But you know, I think it's a really awful thing to accuse anyone of. You know, to say women aren't funny is to say that women aren't creative or intelligent or joyful. You know, and we can't just go around making blanket statements like that. You know, it'd be like saying gay people aren't funny, or black people aren't funny, or German people aren't funny. You know? And we all know that Germans are hilarious. So based on the last example, I thought that maybe I should do a little bit more research. So I started to investigate where the rumour began. I assumed that it began with Angela Merkel. You know, being both a woman and a German, she was my prime suspect. But I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong, because it turns out that it's just an unfounded opinion with absolutely no scientific grounding whatsoever. But what it did make me think was, what if I'd heard about that rumour earlier on in my life? You know, what if it had made me so self-conscious that I deprived myself of my ability to make myself and other people laugh? And how many incredible female comedians have we, as a society, deprived ourselves of because of this terrible lie? You know? And then it made me think about all the other terrible myths that are out there. We're constantly confronted with really harmful and limiting myths, a lot of which hinge on our understanding of ourselves and our estimation of our own self-worth. Socially constructed myths. And men get it too. Oh yeah, men get it all the time. They're constantly being judged, you know, on the size of their muscles, on the size of their salary, and the size of all sorts of things. Okay? But on a slightly more serious note, I'm doing my PhD in sociology at the moment. And I'm particularly interested in the work of a sociologist named Charles Horton Cooley and a theory of his called the looking glass self. And the theory states that we use society as a mirror or a looking glass. And what we do is we imagine how we appear to other people, and then we imagine what their reaction is, and then from these imaginings, we develop an idea about who we are. So it's our imagined assumptions about what other people think of us, absolute myths, which shape our reality. And what's more is, we tend to react to these assumptions by confirming them. So for example, if we assume that people think that we're funny, then we will try to make jokes. But if we assume that people think that we're not funny, then we're far less likely to try. And the truth is, we all make assumptions all of the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. We make assumptions based on gender and race and religion and sexual orientation and socioeconomic background. And then we, as a society, build profiles based on those assumptions, which can turn into stereotypes, which can turn into these self-fulfilling prophecies. And there are so many myths out there. And although it's really, really important to challenge them, the only way to ensure that we're fully immune to their harmful effects is to build a really, really strong vision of who we are and then to confirm it to ourselves with our actions. It's called self-determination. And that means defining yourself on your own terms, regardless of the influence or expectation of your society. And that's actually a really, really difficult thing to do because often, a lot of the time, we're not even aware that we're trying to conform. We're not aware that we're accepting or even playing up to other people's assumptions about who we are. And it's these unexamined assumptions which have the power to govern our lives. They affect our ability to fulfill our own potential and to contribute to our societies in meaningful ways. So we can choose to be passive individuals who collude with our society and our own self-discrimination by letting these damaging myths perpetuate. Myths which deprive us of originality and individuality and authenticity. Or we can face up to the challenge of actively creating ourselves despite all of these myths. And actually, by rising to these challenges, that's how we begin to develop a realistic concept of who we are and what we're capable of. So although our societies have the power to shape who we become, we also have the power to shape our societies. We can fall victim to societal myths, or we can become the creators of new realities. Self-determination or self-discrimination. It's up to each of us individually to keep ourselves in check. We need to ask ourselves, who's really the one that's telling me that I'm not funny or not smart or not good enough? At the end of the day, the most important opinion that any of us will ever have is the opinion that we have of ourselves. So, if you think that your ideas are worth spreading, and if you care enough about other people to contribute your ideas, I think that you should just do it, in spite of the fear of being judged. Because there will always be hecklers in the audience of life. But there will also be plenty of like-minded folks who are more than happy to laugh at your jokes. Thank you.